In this video series, I'm going to be talking about things like what is a project boat and is a project boat right for you? How to select the right project boat, how to get the work done, where to work on your project boat, things like finances and insurance, basically all the information that the other resources leave out. These are all critical to being able to complete your project boat successfully. And a lot of these things are the reason most people fail when it comes time to restoring a project boat. So, how to actually get to the finish line so that you can enjoy the fruits of your labor and use your project boat. So, let's go ahead and get started. In this project boat video, I'm going to be talking about logistics. As the UPS commercial says, the logistics is everything, and it's extremely important when working on a project boat. One of the first things you should do, and perhaps even before you buy a project boat, one of the first things you should consider is where are you going to keep this boat to work on it. Now, a small boat on a trailer may not be a big issue, but if you live in a community that has an HOA, you might want to look into restrictions on keeping a boat in your driveway or your backyard or wherever you plan to work on it. A lot of HOAs won't allow this, so before you get started, check. If you're looking at purchasing a bigger boat, a larger motor yacht or sailboat, things are going to be a little bit more difficult. Unless you own a lot of property or are out in the middle of nowhere, a larger project boat is probably not feasible to keep on your own property. So you're either going to have to keep it in a marina, a storage lot, or some other place where you can work on it. It's important to figure this out before you even purchase a project boat. You want to find a location nearby to keep the boat. This is important. If the boat is going to be more than, say, 30 minutes away from where you live, it will start to become a real issue and it will slow down your work and travel time back and forth to the boat. I've known some people that have tried to tackle a project boat that was 3, 4 hours away from their home. That means a round trip is going to be 6 or 8 hours. And then you have to work on the boat in between there. It really cuts down on the amount of time you have left to work on the boat. It also makes motivation very difficult. It's easy to say, I don't want to drive all the way to the boat today. On the other hand, if the boat is nearby, preferably within a mile or two from where you live, you can easily just hop in your car, truck, whatever, and head on down to the boat, do a little bit of work, and then head back home for dinner or whatever. So give this some serious thought before you even purchase a project boat. Now, there's many places you can keep the boat. As mentioned, a smaller boat might be able to go on your own property. Other than that, you might have to keep the boat in a marina or boatyard. It's important to talk to either the marina or boatyard management before you move the boat there. You want to make sure they're going to be okay with you working on the boat. More and more, I'm finding marinas and boatyards simply do not allow owners to work on their boat while it's in their property. It's getting harder and harder to find do-it-yourself boatyards. Another thing to think about is, are you going to keep the boat in the water or on land? There are some distinct advantages to keeping the boat on land. A lot of times it simply makes it easier to work on it. You'll be able to work on the bottom, do through hulls, so on and so forth. But another drawback with a boat on land means you're constantly climbing up and down a ladder. If the project boat is going to take a long time, more than, say, a few months, you might consider building a stairway up to the boat, which will make getting on and off a lot easier and safer than just trying to climb up and down a ladder leaning against the boat. If you think you're going to keep the boat in the water, you also want to make sure about rules for working on the boat. I've seen a lot of marinas that will not allow you to do any work on your boat while it's in the water. So just like storing it on land, you want to make sure the marina is going to be okay with this. Also, slips are usually fairly close together, and you want to make sure that you're not going to be out there sanding the deck or doing a lot of noisy activity that will annoy your slip mates. This can result in complaints being filed with the boatyard. Once you've found a good location to keep your boat, the next thing to think about is tools and possibly a shop. It can become difficult working on a boat when all of your tools and equipment have to be stored on the boat. You're also going to want a place to store bits and pieces that come off of the boat as you're working on it. You're going to want to remove the basic sailing gear prior to getting started. If you live in an apartment or a small house, then you may need to consider a small storage unit. Also, having a shop you can work in nearby is extremely helpful. It's often much easier to take bits and pieces off of the boat and take them back to the shop to work on. If you are planning to keep the boat in a marina or boatyard, another thing you're going to have to think about is insurance. And this gets a bit tricky when it comes to project boats. Insurance can be difficult to obtain on a boat that's not ready to go to sea. Most insurance companies now require a survey. A survey may not be your friend. It may list a lot of things that will scare the insurance companies off. Most boatyard and marinas now require you have at least liability insurance. Another option with insurance is to look at what they call port insurance. It means they'll provide you insurance on the boat, but the boat is not allowed to leave the marina. This can be a good option when you're working on the boat and you want to protect your investment into the boat without having to have full on-water insurance. Talk to your agent, see what options are available. But it is possible to get insurance. It's just going to be a little bit harder. Keeping the boat in the water can be advantageous, but you also want to make sure that you get a slip that's as close to the parking spot as you can find. This is something a lot of people overlook. But when you're doing work on a boat, you spend a lot of time walking back and forth to your car or truck, getting tools and supplies. If the slip is a long distance from the parking lot, this can end up to a lot of walking back and forth. If the boat is going to be kept on land, you might want to discuss with the boatyard owners whether or not they will allow you to park a small cargo trailer or even allow you to rent a small container to set next to the boat so that you can keep all your tools and supplies there. Being able to have your tools and equipment and supplies right nearby can save you a lot of time. Other locations that might be an option for keeping the boat are storage yards. This is generally cheaper than keeping the boat in a boatyard. However, you may not have access to electricity, and the storage yard may have restrictions on exactly what kind of work you can do. If you're planning on keeping a larger project boat on your property or on a friend's property, you're also going to want to consider how you're going to get the boat there and how you're going to get it back to the water when you're finished. There are plenty of companies that are capable of loading and offloading the boat onto a trailer, but you want to make sure there's land access to where you're going to store the boat that's good enough for a heavy duty trailer and large truck. I've seen people get into trouble when they've tried to truck their boat into a lot only to find out that the trees were too low, there was an issue with power lines, and basically the trucker simply could not get the boat to the place you want to store it. Even though keeping a project boat on land can often be advantageous, keeping the boat in the water has some advantages too. With the boat in the water, you're able to better test systems such as running the engine from time to time, checking seawater pumps work, air conditioning, so on and so forth. Also, if the boat is not in too bad a shape and you're just fixing it up and bringing it back into like new condition, having the boat in the water will allow you to take it out from time to time. This can be a real morale booster in the sense that you finally get to use the boat that you're working on, and you don't feel like all you ever do is work on the boat and never get any enjoyment out of it. I've always said, if the boat's in the water and you can, take a break every now and then, take the boat out for an afternoon, and get to enjoy and appreciate the fruits of your labor. And finally, you're going to want to consider where you're going to get your parts and supplies from. Unless you have a pretty good sized budget, purchasing all of your parts and supplies from a ship's store or a major retailer, you're going to find things get expensive fast. Being able to source parts from a discount supplier will save you a ton of money over the long run. If possible, see if you can set up a commercial account at whatever supplier you think you'll be using. This may not always be possible because they often require a tax ID number, but you could possibly set up a small business whose sole purpose is to restore the project boat. But keep in mind, you may have to file quarterly or monthly sales tax reports with the local government. Some parts stores may be willing to work with you if you explain to them that you have a large project boat that you're going to be working on. Tell them that you plan on spending thousands of dollars on parts and will be working on your project for an extended period of time. You might be surprised. Some stores may well offer you a discount knowing that you're going to keep coming back for a long period of time. It never hurts to ask, I say. I've always been a big fan of using eBay to source more expensive parts. Most of the time this has worked out well for me, but there have been a few occasional times when I've gotten burned. eBay's pretty good about protecting the buyer these days. I have purchased everything on eBay from tow rails and mast sections and other large parts. You'll be surprised what you can find on eBay if you need to. And speaking of planning ahead, when it comes to large purchases, like in my case, a mast, or you may need a motor, or electronics, or other equipment that tends to be a little bit pricey, plan ahead. Start looking early. Don't think you're just going to get online and find a used part that you need and purchase it right away. So make a list of all the major components you think you're going to need and start keeping an eye out in the used market. Sooner or later, you'll find the perfect part to fit your needs. And lastly, something few people think about is handling waste. There can be a fair amount of waste involved when restoring a project boat. You may be taking out large pieces of equipment that will need disposal, and you're also likely to be dealing with hazardous chemicals. This stuff can be difficult to get rid of at times. Now, if you're in a boatyard, most boatyards supply a dumpster available for you to put larger chunks into. They'll also have oil disposal and possibly chemical disposal tanks that you can use. However, if these services are not available to you, you're going to have to give some serious thought as to exactly what you're going to do with your waste products. Every boat project generates a lot of hazardous chemicals. Used acetone, used paints, solvents, all kinds of waste chemicals. Being able to dispose of these properly is important. So give this some thought while you're looking at locations. In my next video, I'll talk a little bit more about selecting the right project boat. Again, this can be key to your success. Thanks for watching, and remember, the fun never stops when you own a boat.